Do you own an AR-15 or some variant of it? Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Chad Albrecht, owner of the School of the American Rifle. His claim to fame is he can basically take a whiff or a look at one of these things and figure out what it's doing wrong, what it's doing right, and how to make any of them better. He runs a training company out on the East Coast that teaches beyond the armorers courses that are out there. He teaches you how to take these firearms, diagnose, and build them to their fullest potential with even budget components. He's developed tools and systems to make them work. Let's dig right in with Chad from the School of the American Rifle. Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Well, hey, all, welcome to yet another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. We've got a special guest here today. They're always special, Mr. Chad Albrecht of School of the American Rifle. So this guy fancies himself as a world-class armorer of Mr. Eugene Stoner's rifles and probably other stuff too. If you follow any of their stuff online or the people that follow him online, you'll find some very strong opinions about how to keep the AR platform rifle running. We had a nice conversation about a week ago and decided to share some of his knowledge and experience with you. And maybe he'll challenge some of the things you think you know about the AR. And maybe in the comments, you can push back if you don't agree with him. So we'll see. Apparently, he knows some stuff. He's even got a serious face as we're starting here. No joking around with Mr. Albrecht with the AR. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Mickey. Glad to be on your show, and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and your followers.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's I've got a lot of various topics. Let's start with something different than like the who are you, and we'll kind of come back to that later. Give me like the top thing that people get wrong about AR-15s, like maintaining them, that you see that comes up all the time.
People tend to over maintain it. I mean, what I mean by that is they're very aggressive in their maintenance of the firearm. They get really aggressive with like stainless steel brushes and chemicals and things like that. And they think that it's a really delicate weapon system. And what I see is people tend to under lubricate and then, like I said, get into the gun with wire brushes, do some wild stuff, trying to get it clean because they believe that a little bit of carbon or a little bit of fouling of some type will shut the weapon down. And it really won't. When I see just the opposite, the thing's rather reliable if you let it run dirty, as long as you keep it lubed. So lubed and dirty is good. Clean and dry is okay, but dry and dirty is not okay. And a lot of people will get it wrong because they tried to run the gun completely bone dry and it gets dirty and they might run into issues. So basically just they leave the gun alone and they lube it, they're fine. They mess with it too much and they can induce some issues. That's what I say.
Interesting. That's such a strange thing in the gun community. You have people that like, I know some systems like to be drier than others. There's like no machine from a lawnmower to a frickin' F-15 that has moving parts that don't have grease or oil on them to keep them moving. And guys just like, oh no, it should be dry. You hear the charging handle get pulled back on these guys' guns, and it's like, you just hear all the bits drag, and it's interesting. Now let's get into it. So you're a gunsmith, classically trained through the old school apprenticeship style of learning, right?
That's right. That's the old way of learning. You'd find someone who was willing to transfer what they know to you. In the old days, they'd have a contract. My mentor didn't go that far, but he's still at it practicing. His name's Scott Scharf. He runs a shop out of Glen Burnie, Maryland, and that's who I got my start from. So I'm grateful for all the things he taught me. He gave me a fantastic foundation to build what I do off of. I learned working on just about everything under the sun.
So do you have like a Sonoran Desert Institute plaque somewhere behind you? Did
I
you
do not.
graduate from
I do not.
If you guys are watching or listening and you don't get the humor, the Sonoran Desert Institute is a online program. So that'd be like learning how to be a carpenter online or learning how to be a plumber online. It just doesn't usually work out that well. You got to actually go do the thing. So people kind of have learned to poke a little fun at it. What did that look like? I'm a carpenter, right? So there's like in the trades. I grew up 10, 12 years old, pushing brooms on a job site, carrying lumber, carrying shingles up on the rooftops. And then, of course, that somebody eventually let me start cutting something. Somebody eventually let me start, maybe even putting a wall together. And you kind of get to the point where, ooh, I get to put crown molding up, or I get to be the guy to, make sure that this whole house gets put together correctly.
And that's exactly how I learned. He made me start with dealing with customers because that's one of the more important aspects of being a gunsmith is you have to interface with your customers. You have to be able to communicate with them so they can convey what's going on, what they expect out of the work that you're doing. And some people are very, very bad at communicating what's wrong with their gun. They'll just say, here it is, it jammed. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Are we talking about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? What kind of jam is occurring? Or are you having a failure to failure extract? So without belittling them, you have to sort of walk through the process and do that. There's the paperwork side of stuff. So I had to learn all the 101 basic stuff before he let me pick up a screwdriver. He trusted me a lot because he had seen some of the work that I'd done for myself. That's what I guess got his attention from me. He liked my detail nature and my sort of obsessive nature. He knew that I wouldn't screw up stuff if he trusted me to work on it. And from there, just a little bit at a time, a little bit of checkering, a little bit of wood and stock work, a little bit of lathe and mill work, refinishing work. I mean, everything under the sun, just like he was trained, he taught me. And instead of having to go to a multi-year school, he went to Colorado School of Trades. He taught me, like I said, the old school way. And what was funny is he would always tell me, look, you're getting what I paid for education wise, and I'm also teaching you how I screwed up and don't do this where I didn't get this as much in school. So it was a fantastic opportunity because a lot of salty gunsmiths, depending on their competition, maybe there's not a lot around them, but they're not always willing to share what they've learned because maybe you're going to open up across the street and affect their livelihood. My mentor had a mentality of, I'm good, and if you open up across the street, good luck. But if you become better than me, fantastic.
Is he still around?
He is. He's probably in his last couple years of running his own shop. It can wear on you when you do the commercial retail stuff because he has like a gun store too. So he's selling stuff. He's working on stuff. He's a jack of all trades and doing all that for as long as he has. I think he's approaching 40 years. It can really wear you down. He's looking forward to not officially retiring, but retiring from having retail and maybe just working on stuff in his shop on his own time when he wants to.
I did. I was having a family dinner for my dad's birthday party this weekend, and I was with one of my uncles, Bob. I used to work with him. He's mid 70s now. And we were talking about the lack of skilled tradesmen. And he said he's one of the best carpenters I've ever known. He came up in a time when guys were still using hand saws, right? And he's built hundreds of beautiful custom homes. Anything in the home a carpenter once did. Not the mechanicals like plumbing or electric, but the same guy formed the foundation that put the garage door in, that put the shingles on. The carpenter used to do all of those things, and now you've got these specialty trades. And he was saying, he's like, yeah, those guys don't exist anymore, just the way that things have changed. One guy's a roofer, one guy's a drywaller, one guy's a tile setter. And in the, I guess I'll say, gunsmithing world, I've met guys and they're like, I'm a gunsmith. Oh, cool. What do you do? Oh, I customize Glocks. Well, I ain't a gunsmith, man. I get it. Like, you could be totally awesome as a stippler, or maybe you're doing some slide work. Remember what was it? 15 years ago where everybody cheese grated the Glock slides, which was so stupid. And You know, who can make more effing holes in the Glock slide? And so I guess that you could say is like real machine work because there's finishing and where guys will do Cerakote. Now they're a gunsmith, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but like when I think of that, I've got a 44 Smith and Wesson from like 1968 that is out of time, and I need to take it to a gunsmith. Like the dude that's stippling Glocks does not know anything about how to fix that.
No, and that's the same thing with gunsmithing. I mean, if you look back at the way that that trade sort of came to fruition, they were a master of many things, all melted into one. And you will always make a better living if you're really good at machining and you're a gunsmith. You will make a better living being a machinist than you ever will as a gunsmith. So that's one of the reasons why it's hard to find someone that really is a true master at the trade, because they understand if they're a master that they can probably make better at just sticking with one particular aspect of that trade instead of doing everything under the sun. And we live in an instant gratification society. So when you take something to a master of a trade and he has a backlog and you say, it's going to take me 6 months to get to that, people are used to Amazon showing up the next day at their porch. They completely lose their mind over that stuff. So it's really difficult to be in the business unless you find that niche. And that's sort of what I did. I just found the niche of things that I really understood well and enjoyed, and it took off from there. But I don't consider myself the best. I just really enjoy what I do, and some people noticed it.
Your niche is what's behind you, right?
Absolutely. And this is sort of just like my wall of history. I collect different variants of early Colt and Armalite stuff. There's some nice armament stuff on the wall there. But yeah, just showing the evolution of the design, where it started, where we are today. It gives you a better appreciation when you're sitting in a class and you're like, well, why do they do this with the firing pin? I mean, I can break out 4 different firing pins and say, here's the evolution of this firing pin, and this is why they change things. And then if they understand why those changes were made, they can sometimes better understand how the whole system works together as a perfect machine, so they can better
That's a good
maintain
way
it.
of looking at it. Yeah, it's kind of like, why do we have disc brakes on our car now instead of drum brakes? The old ones worked, but not as good.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah. I
some
like
of it
that.
has to do with safety and the testing that was done, maybe on the government side. Some stuff was because things had to be modified because law enforcement agencies use certain ammo and it didn't feed well in some guns. So they had to modify feed ramps. So I don't try to dig into the history because anybody can, open up the internet or buy a book and learn about sort of the historical changes of this gun. But taking the history and mixing it with the technical aspect sometimes gives people just a better rounded understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, instead of just saying, oh, well, we cut the ends of this steak off this roast because my mom did that, my grandma did that. But come to find out, great grandma did it because they used a small crock pot and the big piece of meat wouldn't fit in it. But the recipe says to cut ends off the meat
That's a
because it wouldn't fit, right? That's an old story that I heard. And
that's a great analogy. That's funny. Yeah, we just cut those off. That's
yep,
funny.
cut those off because they wouldn't fit in the old small crock pot.
So you just said I think what I heard is you don't teach the history part of it or like delve into it too much because that's so widely available, but you do
Yes.
talk about it in your in-person courses for certain reasons.
Yep. I try to keep it very limited because I try to give them a better technical understanding of what they're working on, how we can modify things to make the parts mesh better together. Something that's more important to do in person, where the history stuff, like I said, anybody can open up the internet and you'll probably get, something that's within, let's say, 80% accurate, depending on the source. But the history stuff's available everywhere. Some of the better books for the AR, like the Black Rifle 1 and 2, and Larry Vickers has these great books. They're like,
Larry's
the
got some
whole
great stuff on it.
family Bible type stuff. It's like this thick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in my rack behind me. Not just for show. I just really enjoy reading that stuff because some of that stuff
Yeah,
happened before I was alive. So how can I speak from experience when I wasn't there?
sure. It's amazing how long that rifle's been in existence. People don't really think about it because it was Vietnam started in the early 60s, and it predated that with the original design variations of it. It's freaking 60, 70-year-old stuff.
Yep. Yep.
Which
And
is
they're
pretty
still
crazy that I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, they're still having trouble replacing it to this day because
Mhm.
of how well it was put together.
It's in our carbine course, I do a little block of instruction where I hold up a extremely modern carbine that I shoot. And while it's got all kinds of changes, it's like my point is this is still very similar. Like Eugene himself could come here and take this thing apart and know how to put it back together. He'd probably like scratch his chin a little bit and be like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or the way we've done the rails and things like that now, but they didn't have some of the tools and stuff that we had.
Absolutely. It's amazing how consistent some of those early guns are, though. Like if you look at the drawings, the prints, you take an AR part that's 60 years old and it's so consistent on the inside. And I guess this would probably go back to your trade. I mean, you take apart an old house and the way the old stuff was put together was just mind blowing. Like you can't drive nails into some of this old wood, right? It's hard to find imperfections in some of this old stuff, even if it's been abused for decades. It's just humbling at how well some of the old stuff was made.
What's so interesting about that is no computers, uh, no laser beams, none of those things. This is dudes turning things on lathes and milling machines and using micrometers and like, come on. And now we've got all of that, and we've got these tolerances that you and I started this conversation because I shared a video of a gun literally rattling itself apart in class. Uh, a legacy American firearm manufacturer that's shipping stuff out that looks like a blind guy screwed together, and we got it to work. But it's like, how in the hell is I've got a behind me a '03 Springfield, same thing that shoots like a minute and a half for this friggin' 100-year-old gun. How did they do that? And then we've got this modern practices and the stuff falls apart.
I'm not there on the floor when this modern stuff's made, and I wasn't back there when the Springfield was made, but um, I believe sincerely that it comes down to attention to detail. The person making and putting together the product either doesn't care, maybe isn't paid enough to care, or they
Mm.
haven't been trained to do it properly. Um, and I think it's very unfortunate. I think a lot of gun manufacturers understand that the bulk of the consumers are never going to take a gun to a class like yours. So torque specs don't matter. Using the right thread retainers for fasteners don't matter. Um, using good springs and um, making sure that dimensions mesh together. None of that stuff matters because any thrown together AR will work for a couple hundred rounds as long as it doesn't fall apart because it's such a well built machine. Like the design itself, the core of it, the foundation is superb. And one of the advanced classes I attended, Sons of Liberty taught it, and I sort of like helped out with the last day of class. But their advanced class is literally about making guns from the class that was built properly uh, not work by sabotaging them. So we would make students leave the class, and I would go and put a bad buffer spring in there and a bad this in there and bad that in there. We go to test it. We have a test trap here in the shop, and the guns still work. And the students would scratch their head like, why did we go through all this stuff to build it right? When it's built wrong, it still runs. Well, the chain's only as strong as the weakest link, and sometimes multiple weak links will cause some really bad stuff to happen. So if you do all the right things, at least with this design, it's really hard to shut the gun down, but you do multiple things wrong and it's going to disappoint you if you use it in a class like yours instead of just sitting at the range and putting two mags through over a 2-hour session.
Sure. I'm sure you've seen stuff 100 times. I have had firearms that my knowledge and experience, I'm like, man, everything looks to be in order, but my group's opened up. Does it need a new barrel? And then I find out, shit, it's just bad gas rings that looked or felt without using any measurement. They felt to be good. And then gas rings got things working tighter again, and my groups shrunk back down. But then I've seen guns that are shooting good, and we pull the guy's bolt apart just to do like an inspection in class, and he's got like one gas ring that's still functioning, and one of them's gone, and the other one's just a little ragged thread that's twisted up in there, and you're like, what the hell? So like, here's a gun that looks, you do the old bolt upside down test, and like everything looks really great. And then this is actually a true story. My friends from Criterion uh, do barrels for me, and I thought, okay, I have my barrel shot out. I sent him the gun, and he says, hey, I put a barrel on it because I know you were going to get ready to need one. He goes, but it was just your rings. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it was so stupid that I didn't look at it. I should have known better. But then I see stuff where like the guns looks to be a piece of shit. I'm sure you've seen stuff like this.
Absolutely. And your followers probably understand how the gas rings can play into the performance of the gun. It's not just about how the gun deals with gas. It's how tight the gas rings are to control how stable the bolt is when it goes into lockup. And if you've got loose gas rings, the bolt can sort of this, and it just changes the lockup, which can change consistency on target. And sometimes it has no effect, but sometimes it does. The same thing as being a gorilla when you're cleaning your barrel from the front. Some guns I've seen have obvious nasty damage to the crown, and they shoot minute of angle. And then some guns, a little nick on the crown, and the groups are all over the place. So I try to teach people the rules are good, but the rules can always be broken too.
Got to have some lines to color inside, but
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It seems like a lot of this stuff used to be like maybe woo-woo, where it was like you got to sprinkle magic pixie dust. My dad's a musician. He'd go to the store to buy a new guitar, and you'd play like 100 different guitars, even go to different stores. And to me, I strum a little guitar, but like I'm not going to play 100 guitars to find the one, and they're all the same color, model, everything. It's kind of like that almost, it seemed. Now you got companies like Sons of Liberty or others that are producing firearms that come out of the box, and you're shooting by good ammo and put a good shooter behind them, and they will shoot frickin' 3/4 minute, half-minute groups.
Absolutely. But speaking of guitars, I mean, there are guys that are very skilled that can play anything they pick up. But then you got guys that are still very skilled, and they'll pay, what do they call it when they tune guitar? Luthier. They'll pay a luthier to go through it and tune it. And I've watched the guys that do that for a trade, and I feel like I found like my kinship, or like the guys that work on watches. It's like people are like, that isn't necessary, just replace it. And it's like, well, no, I come from a different mindset where you can fix something and doesn't need to be thrown away. You can tweak something to make it a little bit more refined, where some people are just like, run it, bro. If you have that mindset, people like me aren't really for you, and that's okay. Not everybody wants a luthier to work on their guitar, and not everybody wants an OCD nerd like me to teach them what to do when they're putting it together and maintaining it.
Do you actually have OCD? People toss that around. And then like, do you go check the gas on the stove 10 times before you go to bed?
I'll go out sometimes at night and check the water faucet in the back of the house to make sure it's not running.
Make sure it's not running. What you're talking about there, it makes me think like most mechanics now just change parts, right? Like, okay, the starter's bad, or the alternator's bad, or the water pump's bad, which years ago, I don't know where one is anymore. By me, there was a guy that would rewind your starter, rewind your alternator, and replace the internal electrical parts to make them work again. Now you just dump the core, buy a new one. With an AR, are you measuring tolerances and then finding a part off the shelf that fits inside of the tolerances you want? Or are you like grinding and polishing on things to make them fit how you want them to?
We talk about doing that in a multitude of ways in the class. So let's say you're trying to build a precision AR. I teach about how the interface between the bolt carrier and the upper receiver can be a factor of how consistent the gun locks up. The gas rings, like you just talked about, with inside the carrier. How well they fit can be a factor. Headspace, the bolt lug contact with the barrel itself. So if you want tight headspace, I'll normally tell people to find a bolt that actually fails a go headspace gauge and then lap the lugs to that barrel to make it have the bare minimum go headspace spec. So you have 100% lug contact, which isn't a whole lot of difference than what people do with precision bolt guns. You want 100% lockup. So I'm trying to teach people that you could do that, or you could just take a bin of bolts and keep trying till you find one. Well, if you don't have access to a bin of bolts, then modifying the part is the way to go. So lots of different ways to
What
sort
if the part you have is too small, so you're not lapping to make that work? So now you need to go. So when you say buy one that's out of spec, you're actually buying one that's on the large end of the spectrum, so you can reduce the material.
Yeah, if it's too small, then you have too much slop, and that's not necessarily a fail. Depends on the purpose of the gun. If it was a duty defensive gun, then you can have some more clearances between parts. But there is an absolute maximum that should be accepted, and that's where some of the more bulk commercial stuff has problems, where there's too much play between the cam pin and the bolt. Will the gun run if there's a lot of play between those two parts? It absolutely will, but you will wear out the parts much, much faster if the fit isn't right. If it's too tight, depending on the purpose of the gun, when it gets dirty, it will slow down or seize up and shut down the gun. So I really try to teach them what's the purpose of the AR, and then build around the defined purpose. What does the user expect out of it? And then the clearances can change between parts based on the use of that gun.
Do you, I know you don't like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't see you like recommending go buy this manufacturer or that manufacturer of rifle, but I've also seen you say like, I see this rifle all the time and it sucks. Do you have, so you're not quiet about that? Do you have brands that you're like, if you're just going to go buy a new rifle, this one's great or this one sucks, don't buy that?
I try to stay away from recommendations. It's not, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but what I've seen in my time is that the quality can change. So if
Sure.
you and I make this video now, and let's say 8 years from now, someone watches your video about this, and I mention a particular brand and I say that it's been great. What if the quality changes next week and they're going to go back
I
and
will caveat my question. Today is June 15th, 2026. As of this day, my OCD friend, is there a like rifle that's like a no-go and a go? Because like you're right, the one that was the piece of crap could become the greatest rifle ever in 8 years too. People be like, "What? He
yeah.
said not to buy that."
I used to say that Colt was pretty much a one of the better ones when it came to making sure that the important parts were right. Now, if you're looking for a precision gun, the Colt probably wouldn't have been a good pick. But when it came to, like we're talking about, how the parts mesh, the internal parts, not the outside of the gun. That's what a lot of people focus on. What's the fit and finish? I don't give two craps about fit and finish. Guns to me are tools. I won't scratch them up when I'm putting them together if I can avoid it, and if not, I make it right. But how do the parts on the inside work based on the purpose of the gun? So Colt's been very consistent over the past 60 plus years. Things have changed a little bit. Let's say in the past few years, but that's happened across the board. All the brands have tend to taken a nosedive since, let's just say, 2020. And you know what I mean by that.
Okay. Sure.
Geisley builds a good rifle. Sons of Liberty builds a good rifle. Daniel Defense builds a good rifle. Centurion Arms builds a good rifle. Psionics builds a good rifle. I'm probably missing a few, but all those companies tend to turn out some really good stuff. And like I said, I'm probably missing a few, but all those companies have also put out some lemons that should have never left the factory. Never, never,
Yeah.
never, never.
I have seen a whole swath of Daniels that are 5 to 6 minute guns, or bigger, with feeding issues, uh, bolt lockup issues, and even stuff like we just had one in class, the uh, safety detent. So the hole in the lower that is supposed to pass all the way through was only half drilled, so we had to take a little drill bit that I happen to have in my truck, and just twist out that little bit of aluminum because I'm sorry, not the safety, the rear takedown pin. So this guy's pin kept walking. That was one, and then the other one was with the safety detent. So I don't know if the guys are just not looking over them in QC. Like, was it just one guy over the course of 3 months that was not trained well? But like, to your point, where there's like, why'd that leave? And I had the clone of the Mark 18, the little guy. It was probably like a 7-minute gun out of the box. And I know what it's meant for, but like for $2,500 or whatever this thing costs, I did a barrel swap on it, and I think we get about 2.5 minutes out of it now. So it's not, I didn't buy some fancy thing. I bought like the core barrel from Criterion and put it on there. So they could have clearly done that from new, I think. Like, what stuff like that's strange to me.
Yep. And when it comes to barrel stuff, I could probably talk about barrels in a class or here with you. We could go back and forth probably a straight week and not stop. Right? There's so many things you could discuss. But what I try to hit as far as like the important things that I've seen with barrels is how they're made and the ghosts that can pop up in that manufacturing method. So the two things that I see with the ghost are hammer forged barrels and button rifle barrels. The process, without getting too technical, is very violent in how it imparts the rifling into that steel. And they do processes to relieve stresses depending on the manufacturer to try to get rid of what has been created in the manufacturing process. And sometimes you cannot remove it. And I call that the ghost in the machine. So I see about 5% of barrels, maybe a little less, maybe 3% of barrels that will never shoot well. Never. No matter how much you do load development and break it in, whatever you want to call it, it'll never shoot well. And that may have been some of the examples of the barrels that you've had, where a cut rifle barrel, I have never in my career seen one that doesn't shoot, that somebody hasn't physically done something wrong to it. And if you have different experience, I'd love to hear it. But that's one of the things that I try to convey to people is there's always the risk of how a barrel's made is that you could have, that basically a tomato steak. We could do all these enhancements to it in the class. We could, enhance the feed ramps and make sure that the gas port is the right size and not over torque the gas system components and not over torque the muzzle device to try to make it as accurate as possible. And it's still a tomato steak. And once you start making changes, most manufacturers will say, you modified it. It's your problem now.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
So, and that's the stuff that I see.
I think that I've been to various manufacturers' facilities where they make this stuff. I think people be surprised. A lot of this stuff is made on machines that are old as our grandfathers. In some of these settings, some places are brand new, state of the art. Swiss and German tooling and things like that. How has metal changed? Metallurgy. So some of these guns behind you that are 50 years old, were they making barrels in those days that could shoot like the stuff now, or could it not touch it to what we're making now?
No, I don't think the old stuff when it comes to the gas operated guns could touch what we're making now. I'm probably misremembering off the top of my head, but I think the standard for the current M4 is like 4 minutes of angle with military spec ammo.
Yeah,
most of them do
4
better.
or 5, something like that.
Yeah, most of them do a lot better than that. But yeah, I mean, they're making production guns now that'll do 2 minutes, if not half that or better consistently. So, I mean, I'm sure that I know that we have more difficulty for manufacturers to source good quality materials if it's not being produced here in the U.S. But no, knowing what it's made of is really important too. And that's a lot of people that work on guns for a living understand because they're actually like machining stuff and cutting stuff. They can feel the difference when they're cutting something that ain't right on a lathe or a mill. Where an armor, they're not cutting into nothing. They're like, well, I've never seen any problem with that. It's like, well, dude, you don't machine stuff, so you haven't seen it. Of course, you're not going to know what I'm talking about because you don't cut metal for a living. or
Mm-hmm.
you don't weld. So all those things you can see through experience, things just aren't right as soon as you start working on it. But no, the older stuff, it worked well reliability wise, but when it comes to an accuracy standard, consistency on paper, the new stuff I think blows it out of the water.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, like back in the day, like Les Bear or Bill Wilson, they both built some, highly accurate or accurized guns, and Colt had a couple heavy barreled rifles, and even those, I've seen a Les Bear shoot a quarter minute. It's the guys I know that are like long range legends hate gas guns for the most part, because there's just so many variables. I've got a couple 6.5s and 308s. I think the 308 is less finicky. I don't know why than the 6.5s that I have. It could just be the way that that particular gun was built. Do you get into any of the larger caliber stuff, or you stick with the 223 5.56?
No, we do allow it. The more popular stuff is the 6 arc stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of the guys that get into that, they're the the let's just say the larger bore AR calibers that still use the AR15 foundation. They essentially hog out the bolt face to fit the bigger cartridge in there, and that compromises the integrity of the bolt, if you will. So they don't last that long. So I'll see guys all the time, all over social media. They'll break a 6 mil arc after 3,000 rounds. They're like, this is a piece of crap. It's like, no, you got your life out of that bolt. That cartridge wreaks havoc on bolts because they're hogging out so much material and the nature of the cartridge. And they're like, well, it should last longer than that. It's like, well, what did you pay for the bolt? I don't know, $75. Well, it's not nice to say, but that's sort of what you get, right? If you want more out of it, you got to pay a little more in a lot of cases. That doesn't guarantee longevity, but a lot of the guys putting this stuff together, they're just assuming the Lego mindset. They're just buying whatever they can get for the cheapest budget or sale they can find, throwing it together, and hoping for a gun that puts 10 rounds into a group this big and lasts for 30,000 rounds. It's like, no, dude, you're not building a machine gun. You're building a precision rifle that may have a reduced service life if you want to keep the groups tight.
Sure. I want my 1-ton pickup truck to get 40 miles per gallon. I want it to handle like a Porsche. Yeah. I want it
Yep.
to be as quiet as a Tesla. I still want it to be able to pull my 10,000-pound trailer. It's got to do it all. And I only want to pay $600 for the whole thing.
They do.
Yeah.
And the AR is such an easy weapon to reconfigure. Like, they'll try to build one gun that does it all. It's like, no, don't do that. Make a precision upper for when you want to shoot the small groups. And if you want a barrel with a longer service life, maybe consider a barrel that's hammer forged. But maybe the groups will be larger on that one. So pick something and do some research on it instead of just buying the shiny object. A lot of people do that. They complain about it. I saw a guy last week about that 6 millimeter arc that was bitching about the barrel. I think his groups opened up at like 3,500 rounds, and it's like, you got 3,500 rounds out of 6 arc. That's not bad. It's a stainless steel barrel. I mean, the life on that's going to be lower than something that's hammer forged and chrome line. All
Talk a
barrels.
little bit about that. So a lot of people listening, viewing are not as nerdy as some of the people that you get with every day. Why would a 6 arc have a lower life than a standard pressure 223?
To put it simple, it's just chamber pressure and velocity. The more pressure, the more velocity. First thing that goes in the barrel generally is the throat area at the very beginning of the rifling. And when that degrades, the gun will still fire safely, but it just doesn't control that projectile is consistent around the rim.
Around as it grabs onto the rifling.
Yep. That's the short and skinny of the way I try to explain it. It changes the way that the gases are being dealt with as it's pushing the projectile too. Once it reaches that sort of destroyed throat area, it can change the way that the bullet has friction depending on how fouled or clean the barrel is. It can happen at the gas port. I've seen barrels that have very eroded gas ports start to shoot poorly when there was no significant throat or muzzle erosion. And you can usually detect that with the bore scope. You can see copper being ripped off the projectile at the gas port.
So you get some sharp bits at the port as the bullet passes by. It's creating irregularities in the jacket. So once it hits air, it's lost its centricity.
Yep. Yep. That's how people
Okay.
sort of like, watching a game of football and somebody, makes contact with the football after it leaves the quarterback's hands. It's not flying the same way no more. Anything you do with that bore affects the flight of the bullet and how consistent it leaves the barrel. But yeah, if the gas port gets eroded from a lot of use, let's just say a barrel that has 10,000 rounds, you look up into it and you're going to see a really eaten out gas port from the high pressure gases eating it away, and it'll be elongated. And that elongated section may not have any impact on the projectile as it passes it. But if it's stripping copper off, you'll see it with a scope up in that eroded area. It'll literally rip it off and deposit it. And a gun that's been on the rack for a while, you won't see copper. You'll see oxidized copper. So it'll be bluish green, depending on the cleaners you use. But it'll be there. It'll be there.
What kind of pressures are we talking about with like the 6 arc? So what 223 is like 55,000, like a standard pressure of 55 grain. You're like 55,000, 58,000, something like that PSI.
Yeah, it depends on how it's being loaded. I mean, some of the newer stuff like this NOS ammunition is 80,000 plus PSI for 5.56 cartridges, and the AR is handling it. But depending on the organization, they want to get 20-inch barrel velocities out of a 5.56 out of a 10-inch gun, and it's achievable with the right technology, and that's where we're sort of going. And this is where it becomes even more important to make sure that you're buying components that are made of the right stuff, because if you put a bolt in there that's not made of the right materials, it's going to fail on you, maybe in a really dangerous way.
So you're talking for that particular cartridge 25-30,000 psi over the standard pressure stuff. So same conversation as a moment ago. Now these guns service life just falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you look at the cost of the ammo, like something like 6 ARC, right? Depending on whether or not you're loading it or buying it. I mean, the amount of ammo that it takes to burn out even a quality barrel, the ammo cost is astronomical compared to what the barrel itself costs. So people worry a whole lot about barrel life, and it's like, well, how much fuel, if this was a car, did you have to burn to wear the engine out, right? And they're like, oh, well, I never thought of it like that. It's like, yeah, you want a barrel to last 1,000,000 rounds, but you don't have a 1,000,000 round ammo budget. So stop stressing.
Think of a barrel like tires. It's optimal when I put it on there, and it literally degrades from day one down, and eventually I drive like 50,000 miles a year, so I'm a tire aficionado, in my opinion. But I've tried them all. I've had them all, and to me, it's a perishable. Like, I'm not trying to destroy them, but if I go drive, I last year did I don't know, 1,200 miles along the Mexico border through New Mexico, Texas, Arizona on gravel. I had a set of tires with 15,000 miles on them when I left home here in Chicago. By the time I made it back, they were done. It was 90 degrees, in the Arizona heat, 100 degrees. The road surface was, hot enough to cook an egg, and my tires were done. So it's like, that's going out and doing mag dumps with the gun. It's a weird thing, I think, to try to expect them to last. Just go buy another one.
Yep. And this gun's easy to change barrels on. It ain't like you have to send it back to a manufacturer if you have, the bare minimum of tools and equipment. Going back to
pipe wrench.
Well, going back to the 6 ARC, the mags aren't the same, right? So one of the things that I see with 6 ARC, you can't just take a regular, 5.56 mag and throw 6 ARC in and expect it to run right. But there's a very inconsistent nature of magazines. The last class from last weekend, student brought 6 ARC build. Other guys had 5.56, and he had 3 different brands of magazines, and only one of the brands of magazines would work. And the more expensive one wasn't the one that ran.
You guys shoot during this class to test the guns?
Yep. At the end of it, I'll try to pan the camera over. There's a test trap in the corner. So we're not shooting for accuracy. It's just, mag dumping.
Make the gun work.
Make sure the guns work. But yeah, we test to make sure that it's firing it's ejecting and ejecting consistently. We make sure that it's locking the bolt open when the gun runs empty, and then we pick up the casings because the casings tell you so much about how a gun is running. You look at where the primer's been struck, if it's centered, if it's flattened out, there's so much pressure potentially. If it's dinging the cartridge, it might be coming out too fast. If you see a lot of gouges in it, you may have some issues with the feed ramps. If it's got frosting, you might have a rough chamber. Lots of stuff. It tells you, even if the gun's running, the casings will tell you if things aren't right, and maybe you can make some enhancements to get a better use out of the gun.
So somebody signs up for one of these courses. Are they one day? They multiple days?
2 days officially, but I'm cramming 4 days into 2 days. Day one's 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and day two starts at 8 in the morning. And some of our classes run until 2 and 3 in the morning on Monday morning.
What the hell's wrong with you? Why not just book another day? Go to sleep, have a steak.
Well, you are right. One of the things that I found, and I've experimented with this, is that I see half as many students sign up if I extend the class by more than 2 days. They look at lodging, potentially rental cars, time away from work or their business. And a lot of the people that I'm training are in the business in some capacity. So being away for 4 days and then you account for another day, essentially it could turn into a week class if I slowed down the pace. I saw half as much enrollment when I added days. So squeezing it into 2 days made it so it was more palatable for most people. But I would prefer to do it over 4 or 5 days, but it's just the student base don't seem to have the availability to do that.
I gotcha. What's a guy or gal learn coming to your course versus going to Acme Rifle Company's professional armorer course?
I make it clear that my class is a blend of gunsmith and armor stuff. Gunsmiths, make, modify stuff, where armors or parts changers. I'm not trying to be derogatory there. I mean, I call myself an armorer too. But if they find a part that's wrong, they replace it with another factory equivalent part. We do some gunsmithing. We modify some parts. There is the right way to do something and the wrong way. So I tell people, if you're uncomfortable crossing that line, don't, and then just replace the part. But we can fix some things. And we're
Can you give me an example?
So for instance, if we have a barrel that has a rough chamber, regardless of how someone may justify that chamber being rough, we have flex hones and polishing gear in the class where we can physically fix that chamber. Yep, go in there and clean it up.
Go back to somebody justifying it being rough. Are you saying a manufacturer says that's how it's supposed to be?
Absolutely. They say that it eliminates bolt thrust. That's their excuse.
I've seen some brand new guns. Whose was it last year? It was two. So you see these guns come into class, and what I see is guys out. I force these dudes to shoot groups. So like one of the main takeaways of our standard carbine course is, what is the potential accuracy of your system as it sits? Like what do we get at 50 yards? What do we get at 500 yards? Whatever. And people always can go, well, if I put a 1 to 6 on it, or if I had, different bipod, I don't care. Like as it sits, what's the best this thing will do? And man, it's crazy how many shitty chambers are out there. Guys trying to get rounds out that are stuck in the chamber, or they won't seat properly. And so first thing I always do is tilt the upper and just take a look to see, is there some physical problem. You take a look at the ammunition, who loaded it, is it out of spec, just real rudimentary stuff. And then I'll take their mag and shove it in one of my guns and see if the stuff's feeding through my gun. And almost all the time it's just like these manufacturers, they'll call them and they'll go, no, you're stupid. You just don't know how to load the gun, or what junk ammo are you using? And no, we tried 8 ammunitions. Anyway, so they're saying that they've got these rough chambers for bolt thrust. Talk about that. What would that mean to us non-gunsmiths?
If the chamber is smoother, the cartridge expands more violently from the front and the back this way. So the cartridge, the back of the cartridge, essentially punching the face of the bolt, thrusting the bolt back, which could, in theory, and it can open headspace up on a gun quicker.
Okay.
So precision guys will intentionally make the chambers rougher on, let's say, a bolt gun, not super rough, but just that if it was an engine, it's cross-hatched. So you take it home and go back and forth with it, not mirror finished, but cross-hatched. So when that cartridge expands, it sort of bites and doesn't go to the front and rear as violently, and that makes more consistent operation of the cartridge as it's igniting the propellant, things like that. So they'll say that that makes the gun more inherently accurate, and it does on a bolt gun. Because you're never going to lift the bolt on a bolt gun when it's still got some pressure going on, where a gas gun, as soon as the system sees gas in the gas port, it's starting to do stuff. And if it's too rough, it has trouble breaking that bond that occurs between that rougher than it should be chamber and getting the cartridge, the fired cartridge out of the chamber, the fired casing out of the chamber. So smoothing up increases the likelihood that it's going to come out of the chamber. But that takes a little bit of give a crap, right? When they're making barrels, are they going to take a person and, hone it, clean it out? And it's just that extra little step. But on the opposite side, if I've never had Criterion, got a lot of Criterion barrels that come through my class. I've never had a Criterion barrel where a student has tried to enhance it to make it work, and Criterion says, no, we're not warranting that, right? But I've seen it with other manufacturers before where we've cleaned stuff up, and they're like, no, you polished the chamber, that gun not shooting is now your fault now.
Okay. So I think what I just heard, just to be clear, Criterion doesn't get upset about somebody polishing a chamber. Other manufacturers say you mucked with it, so you own it. Is that what you just said?
Correct. Now, again, to sort of be fair to Criterion, I'm not saying any Joe Blow doing that, but I've never had a student who has been able to say, I did this in Chad's, class, and they said, well, you don't know what you're doing. I've never had them try to do that, where, like you said, most manufacturers, like, you need to try different. They have all these excuses. They have this list of how you're stupid and our product can't possibly have an issue. I haven't seen Criterion do that before.
One thing I know about anything but rifles or tires, if you go to USPSA website and look at like a national match or a state match, you can see which guns in order, like who's shooting what guns. Okay, there was 40 Glocks at the match and 10 CZs and 12 Berettas. There's no Beretta 92 that's winning every match, or no Glock 17 that's otherwise everybody go shoot that gun. And you go to a PRS match or a Camp Perry match, there's no like, oh, Lilja barrels, that's the only barrel that ever wins, because everybody'd buy it. Everybody'd have Pirelli tires or Nitto tires or whatever. It's just there. So much of it's not just the thing. Yep. So the chamber, so nice and polished, better reliability, possibly a reduction in accuracy potential, a little rougher, maybe reduction in reliability until the gun maybe gets broken just from brass rubbing in there, but possibly better accuracy potential.
Possibly better accuracy. And that's the trend that I see, is more people want that, that battle gun to be a sniper rifle too. So manufacturers trying to tighten up dimensions in the chamber this way, wise, and it stops being a fighting gun and more of a let's shoot one round every 30-second gun.
Are you a fan of the wild chambering of Bill's?
I don't have any problems with it, but most people that I asked that buy a barrel or buy an upper or buy a gun with it, I'm like, what ammo are you going to shoot it in? And their normal response is 55 to 62 grain projectiles. It was made for heavier bullets. So I'm like, so why did you pick that when you're going to feed a steady diet of this? You're going to buy some nice, heavier match grade ammo to see what it's capable of? No. It's like, so you would have been fine with just a 5.56 barrel. And they're like, oh, and then the light bulb goes off. And why do they buy that barrel? Because a lot of manufacturers, a lot of people on the internet will basically tout it as like this precision barrel. It is with the right fuel, right? You put the right ammo in it, the right fuel in the right machine, it's going to perform well. You put the wrong fuel in the wrong machine and it won't perform well. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's just people tend to put lighter projectiles in it, and it's not made for that, but it'll work.
I get very good results out of the Radians that I shoot. Those are stainless barrels when they're new before I shoot them out, and then they become Criterion barrels. But they start out life as a stainless 223 Wild 1 and 8. I believe that they do with all of those, and they shoot the 55 or the 70. That's pretty much what I shoot: 55 grain or 77 grain out of those guns, and they seem to eat them both pretty well.
They will. You just might not get as much out of it if it was like a 223 throat for the 55 grain, which is a much shorter throat. But if you're shooting higher pressure ammunition, a 223 throat isn't a good idea.
Sure. Hey, you're seeing a lot. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
No, you were fine. But to go back about the difference in my class compared to other ones is a lot of manufacturers, as far as armorers classes, are teaching you how to work on just their weapon, like the things they've done to it to make it theirs. You replace a bad part with theirs and theirs alone. They don't always get into how the parts should match. They just say, well, our parts are made to our standard and don't worry about it. I'm being overly simplistic there, but that's basically the takeaway from the class. They want you to be competent in putting it back together. Some don't even get that far. They'll tell you, well, if you have a problem with a barrel, the armorers class I took for SIG AR-based rifles, the M400s, they say send the whole thing back to the factory. Most people are not qualified to remove a barrel from an upper receiver. They're basically a factory assembled only product. And I sort of tilted my head, and I didn't argue because I'm not that guy in a class, but I disagree 100% with that. But that's what they were teaching the other officers in the class that I was attending, is that you're not capable of doing this, so send it back to the factory. Where some classes are very involved and they'll teach you, how to get down into the details. Colt will get into that. But again, it's a Colt specific class. So if you've got a problem with a Colt bolt, obviously they're going to tell you, don't buy, a Geisley bolt and put it in there because it's not a Colt bolt. Will it work with a Geisley bolt? Yeah, it'll work. But if you don't know the difference in how Geisley makes the bolt and how Colt makes the bolt, maybe those parts will crash and not get along. And that's where I go into. I go into how do the parts marry? What's the right amount of clearance? And that's I just go a little deeper. That's it. Not better.
If a guy was going to buy a bolt to toss in his gun bag to have a backup bolt, because I've seen a dozen break every summer or two, what would be like a good bolt carrier just to buy and toss in the gun bag to have?
I see a lot of problem with carriers, how the key is installed. Companies tend to use poor quality screws. They don't use the right torque. They don't stake right. When it comes to the bolts, though, that usually comes down to the materials that are used, how it's been tested and inspected, and maybe the coating they're using on it. One of my favorite at the moment, and what is it, 615 to 2026, has been the Geisley Carpenter 158 plus bolt. I've worked on to date a half dozen ARs that blew up due to bad ammunition. And normally when an AR blows up, everything on the upper is pretty much toast, except for maybe the muzzle device and maybe the forward assist, right? It just roaches everything. It blows outwards. Everything's done.
Yeah.
Half dozen guns. They weren't Geisley guns. They were, Franken guns, but they blew up. And out of those half dozen guns that had the Geisley bolts in there, the Geisley bolts were 100% intact still. I had them sent out for magnetic particle inspection. I did it on my own. I have some basic MPI stuff, and no defects were found. No cracks.
Still usable.
Still perfectly usable. I have a Geisley upper that came from a range with documentation that it had 100,000 rounds through the original gun. And the bolt was 100% intact still after 100,000 rounds. The barrel was done probably 20,000 rounds prior, but the bolt was still usable. So the student donated the upper and took the bolt and carrier, rebuilt the carrier and the bolt, new firing pin, new gas rings, and put that bolt in another gun, and it's still trucking now, thousands of rounds later. So
I love that.
The secret sauce that they're using to make those bolts, I really like, but it's probably overkill for most people. Right? What would you say, Mickey, as far as if you had to throw a percentage on it, how many people are going to put 10,000 rounds on an AR they own? percentage
Yeah,
wise.
half a percent of gun owners.
Yeah, so that Geisley bolt's probably much overkill for most users, but that's the bolt that lives in most of my serious use guns. Not the ones on the rack behind me. They're not serious use guns. I mean, they would do something if I needed to, but it's not for like, burning tens of thousands of rounds of ammo without expecting a failure. The Geisley bolts are a forged bolt where typical AR bolts are made of billet. So the grain structure inside the Geisley bolt is just better. And nobody that I know of, unless it's a prototype, has done that yet. So that's what makes the Geisley bolt sort of awesome. I'm not paid by Geisley, not sponsored. I get nothing back from them. A couple of their senior guys have come through my classes, but again, I'm trying to stay brand agnostic. I have my personal favorites, but it doesn't mean that they're better because I like them.
Yeah, that's bullshit. If I was going to go hang out with Mario Andretti and he was going to tell me which motor oil to use or which tires to buy or, which gasket material for putting the top end of the motor together is his favorite, that would be valuable to me to know. So I think that, the Geisley thing, almost every class I shoot my students' rifles a little bit if they're having any issue, just so I can see how the gun feels and see what they are looking at through whatever their optic or sights are. Sometimes it might be something stupid. Oh, you've got the dot at the highest setting. Of course, you're having a hard time, seeing the target at 100 yards. Let's dim the dot down or something, it could be something stupid. Every Geisley I've shot in the last few years with whatever ammo I fed it has been like a freaking tack driver. I was out in Vegas in some pretty stiff full value winds this spring. I've got a picture of the group online just shooting, B8s at a hundo. We're just proned out in the dirt, no bags, no bipods, just magazine in the dirt. And I walked down to the target and it was a freaking like 3/8 of an inch 5-shot group. And I was like, holy shit. Like, so I went and did it again. It was a suppressed gun this guy had with, I forgot who, it was just a low power optic on it. But I was like, this freaking thing shoots, man. And then I just had one in class a couple weeks ago, last week. Same thing, total tack driver. It's just like, these things are freaking badass. I would definitely buy one if I need it. I need another AR, like I need a hole in my head, but tack drivers.
Yep. I have seen ones that don't shoot, ones that, like I said, should have never left the factory. And guys, he's usually very responsive to replacing stuff that has problems, especially if it's something I like snap a photo of and put it on social media. Usually the social media guy or gal, whoever manages, is in there like, get the student or the customer in contact.
Call us before you do that. You are a huge fan of piston guns. You love piston guns.
I like piston guns that aren't ARs.
Okay, talk about that.
An AR that has a piston is a person that has had gender reassignment surgery.
Okay, so you're saying it's no longer what Eugene intended.
No, there are companies that do a really good surgery because they sort of perfected, their thing. I'm not trying to be inappropriate here and like piss people off.
You can say whatever you want.
It's not the same animal anymore. I don't have a hatred for AKs and scars or any other that was designed as a piston gun from the outset. But I mean, if people came out with like a blowback 1911, the 1911 fans would justifiably be like, "This is the stupidest shit I've ever heard of in my life. Why did you do this?" Well, because 1911s are not reliable. They're not reliable because people don't know what the hell they're doing when they put them together, and they've changed things to make them not what they were originally designed. I mean, the ones that were good for war, they would rattle, right? You start tightening stuff up to make them more accurate, and maybe it's not the same ready for war gun anymore. People just lose mindset of that. The companies do gas piston guns well are like H&K. It pains me to say that. H&K does it pretty good. LWRC does a pretty good job. But a lot of the other companies, I just try to get people to consider, okay, you got this this sort of niche gun that a company came out with. They say it's the best thing ever, just like everybody says it's the best thing ever. But let's say that company isn't a big one and they fold. Where are you getting replacement parts for that machine that you shoot? And then the lights start to go on in their head, and like, oh, I didn't think about that. Because there's proprietary parts in the gun. It's not an
Sure.
AR anymore. You change things. So
You've
I just
got a
try to get people to
You've
think.
got a DeLorean in the garage.
Yeah. If you're gonna shoot a lot with a gun and train with it, it should be not because I'm saying this. It should be a gun that you can get parts for. And this is what I love about Glocks. I can get parts for them anywhere. It doesn't mean it's the best machine for everything, but I can get parts for it everywhere. I like the AR because I can get parts for it. It's not the best at everything, but it's pretty damn good, and you can tweak
It's a
it.
Ford F-150 or a Toyota Tacoma.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if you are a fan of the gas piston guns, that's fine. But I try to get people to really think about what their niche are for. They'll show there's a video that's probably, I don't know, 20 years old where H&K compared a Colt M4 to their piston gun, and they had a guy in like a wetsuit with like a welding mask on, and he came up out of the water and fired the Colt M4, and it blew up because it still had water in the gas system. You have a different pressure between the atmosphere and the gun blew up. Piston gun comes up out of the water, boom, it goes off. People see that it doesn't go boom and then like explode, and they're like, the H&K is obviously a better gun because the AR's got this issue. They intentionally designed the H&K to fire with water in it by adding more chamber support at the back end so it wouldn't blow out the back of the cartridge when there was water in the gas system and the barrel. But that also creates more reliability issues and magazine sensitivity issues that nobody that don't shoot H&Ks are aware of. So it improved for one thing, but detracted from another. So if I was a Navy SEAL, maybe a piston gun might be a great thing because I might be in a wetsuit coming up out of the water and going to shoot a bad guy. But I'm not a Navy SEAL, so I don't need a piston AR. That's what I just try to get people to think about. Like, what was it really made for? Where does it excel? And the AR doesn't have a problem with a lot of things people claim that it does, except for a very few niche things like being fired with water in it.
How about not having all of that dirt blow back into the gun? That's the argument.
So the term is usually the AR shits where it eats, right? So it throws debris back into the action. So there is some bad to that, but there's also some good. So there's been some testing. You could argue the testers maybe were biased, but YouTubers that have done comparisons to guns like the AK and the AR kick the AK's ass when you throw mud on it because the AR is more sealed from the environment than an AK is, right? They did similar tests to H&K guns, piston ARs versus regular ARs. And when you got mud into the rail system, the piston got jammed up into the manifold on the barrel and the gun stopped working.
Now you got to
Where
take
the
shit
AR,
apart to get that.
exactly. You got to get the rail off or wash it off with some water. Where the AR, since the gas system is completely sealed until it gets into the bolt carrier, the only way you can shut it down with fouling is to run it bone dry or to let something get into the action, which is very difficult to do when the magazine's loaded and the dust cover's closed. So my argument is if mud gets into a gas piston AR, let's say it gets into the bolt carrier group, it's less likely to clear itself because there's less gas going into the action than a regular AR would. As it's blowing that extra gases into the action, it will start to clear contaminants out of the action system, and it will start to run if you have sufficient lubricant in the gun. And I've done testing myself to show that, not just trying to be a blind follower of the AR, but I've intentionally taken piston guns and done comparisons. I didn't video it because it was for my own use. But I've seen personally where the AR will sort of fix itself because of that gas throwing back into the action.
Starts blowing debris free.
Yep.
It's amazing how reliable modern stuff is in general, especially when you keep it lubed in decent working order. I mean, you go. I think I was telling you this on the phone call. I took an old Smith & Wesson M&P that I've had 20 some odd years, 25 years, just literally opened it up, made sure it was okay, took a toothbrush and wiped a few parts off and lubed the bolt and I had to replace the spring on the safety detent because it was no longer holding the safety with positive uh, pressure. But I shot 2 minutes with that thing. I put a new dot on it, and I shot 2 minutes with it. It's freaking 20, and it's stock everything, and I guarantee that gun has got at least 15,000, if not more, rounds. And that's pretty great for something I probably paid $375 for, $400. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yep. And I have several Smith & Wesson ARs of my own, and they're pretty solid guns. I'm working on a series now where I'm ripping apart 7 of them brand new out of the box to look for problems. And even on the first video that I made, you got people in the comments, I've never had a problem. I'm like, great. But if you've got this gun and you find what I'm showing you to look for, maybe it would be wise to consider fixing it so it never causes you a problem. It's not that I'm taking a big dump on Smith & Wesson. It's like, let me give you some food for thought. And that's where the brand agnostic stuff comes from. I would conceal the brands of everything that I show online if I could, Mickey, but people lose their shit over it. They think that I'm being paid to conceal stuff. And I've tried it before. They lose their ever-loving mind because they want to be told what to buy, not how to think.
That's interesting. And on the inverse of your point, I'm not suggesting because that Smith & Wesson that I just talked about shoots 2 minutes, go buy one. I'm just saying the fact that this thing, and I guarantee the last time I shot it, which was a decade or more ago, I was probably doing mag dumps with it. And I was using it as my OP4 gun for a local SWAT team when I'd go do OP4 training with them. And then, we're making noise with this thing. So I'm running ammo through it. It went completely ratty dirty with a couple hundred rounds into the cabinet where it sat for a decade. Maybe once every few years, like during a snowstorm, I might pull some shit off the rack and just make sure nothing's got rust anywhere on it. In fact, I do that from time to time. So I'll wipe some, the fasteners and stuff that are tool steel that don't have coating, I'll take a brush and smear some lube on it. But your point, this space, the way people communicate, like F you, Chad, you're a freaking bought and paid for by Colt or whoever. Or on the other hand, well, Chad from School of the American Rifle said this, so that's just exactly. I just made your followers super gay too. They just, he says this, so that's exactly the way it has to be. And I'm like, I don't know, like guys have sent me stuff that has been in your videos. I'm like, well, I've never done that, and I've got this gun that's worked for years, so I don't know about that either. People get very, very angry about this shit.
They do. And I snap back on some of them. People are like, well, you shouldn't do that. It's not professional. Well, it's my own company. And if, it's not Wendy's. Like you don't get, what you want, how you want, or Burger King. It's not your way. If you don't like what I do, um, you know, the internet's large. You can just avoid me. But I'm trying to teach people that are willing to learn stuff. And it's not just about getting people to reel them in for a class. It's how much, if you really like the AR family of weapons, like the things that I'm teaching you is only going to give you a better experience with the gun. And I try to tell people that I'm not going to teach you to make the gun less accurate or less reliable. All the improvements that I try to teach is to try to maximize the accuracy potential and the reliability potential of the gun. I won't do one or the other if it degrades from either. But that's all I try to do is just share what I've seen working on a crap ton of these things and teach people to have a better experience if they're willing to do so. Some people aren't interested in working on their guns. I mean, maybe they're in the cars and they got like a guy that's their mechanic and they take their race car that they race to the mechanic. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But some people are shooters and they want to work on their weapons. And that's the guys that I try to gear my time, my time and information on is the guys willing to learn something new.
I dig that. I would add to that my own personal opinion. One, I 100% agree. Your business, you're an American, you don't want to buy from me. I get this stuff all the time. Guys will go out of their way to make a video talking about that I'm a dumbass. Cool, man. I really appreciate that. I'll respond with things like, can you please do me a favor and tell your mom to stop texting me? Because as much as I enjoyed my time with her, our relationship is over. I'll say something like that. No, even angrier. But I think if you're going to have one of these guns, you should at the very least know how to break it down, give it a once over, know the parts that should be maintained, because they can be dangerous, right? If something's out of spec or, and this idea of a well-regulated militia, I'm not getting preachy to you, but the folks listening, like well-regulated means that I have my stuff working. I know how it works. If I need it to protect my family or community, if something goes sideways, I can maybe scrounge parts and get the thing back up and running. Or maybe I'm intelligent and I've got a little toolbox with gas rings and a bolt carrier and another buffer assembly and all the shit, so that in that really crazy time that hopefully never comes, I'm the guy that's planned for. Like, that's well regulated. So I can't rebuild a Ferrari engine, but I could fricking definitely my old 302 or 351, take it apart. This new diesel. I mean, now you got to be a fricking NASA engineer to work on the things.
Absolutely. And I don't know why people are so adverse to it. I am very adamant in my classes that I am teaching you, like if this was equivalent to the racing industry, I am teaching you how to work on the race car. I'm not telling you how to be a driver. I do not get into that. Go learn from a person who teaches people how to be a race car driver. I stay in my lane. I do take classes because the more I learn from shooting instructors, tactics instructors, I'm not saying it makes me a better shooter, but I understand better of what my customers and students might need from me when I've
Mm.
been through those classes and instruction. Like, what do they want the gun to do? If I've taken classes and used the gun that way, sometimes it helps me understand what they're wanting. So I try to stay well rounded with the training that I take, but I stay in my lane. I do not veer from it.
I think that's a great point. You see this stuff. Engineers make things sometimes or oftentimes because it's what they want to make, not because it's what is the best case scenario or what people need. A point in case would be the finger hook on the front of a trigger guard of most modern pistols. There's nobody alive teaching somebody to hook their support finger onto the front of a trigger guard, but they're still there. And in some ways, it's a good feature because it makes holsters work well. It's something that the holster can clamp onto, but like nobody needs that. Or some of like the goofy bipods, or man, the reticles I see that guys show up to class with, compensating reticles, or the congested reticles. It's like, could we just get like a duplex or a dot, or even like high end stuff? Like I'll poke at uh, uh, Night Force. I've got whatever their top of the line, the little, I think it's a 1 to 6 or the 1 to 8. Is it the NX8? Doesn't matter what the name of it is. It's meant to be like a designated marksman. This is the frickin' the 18 or 20-inch carbine, so the guy can stretch out with the 77 grain to save the day. The aiming point is like 6 MOA. So you cover up like the entire target with it. It was like, well, who thought of this? Like, who literally thought that this was a good idea? So I think when a guy like you goes out and sees, oh, that's how these idiots are breaking this, or this is what they're trying to make it do, I think that's freaking perfect. Did I lose you, Chad? Are we frozen?
Just just for a second, but I still heard you. You said
You're
that it was
you're
perfect, and it's
Yeah, I think two go ahead.
the Starlink that I have can sometimes be hit or miss.
Elon, I just read, became a trillionaire today, the first person in history to be a trillionaire. And pretty soon our kids will be born and they're just going to plant something in their head for his Starlink to track us all over this earth. And then we'll
Yep,
really need more ARs.
that's right. Make sure they
Yeah,
work.
yeah. How do people find you to come to a course? What's that look like?
Well, I always tell people, try to look at some of the other content that I've put out there already to see if I'm even for you first. I steer a lot of people away from my classes. I'd say try to take other classes that are more of the 101. And if not, buy like a cheap AR parts kit, take it apart, put it back together a bunch of times, get very familiar with how to take it apart and put it together, because My classes are intense technical wise. And if you're struggling with the basics, you're going to have trouble following along what I'm teaching.
Mm.
Um, but if you've watched my video content, I give away about half of what I teach online already via YouTube, like the videos that I make, half of it's on there. If you still find yourself craving more information, my in-person classes can be found at SchooloftheAmericanRifle.com. You can look for the schedule, sign up for a class. We teach at least 2 classes a month, every month out of the year, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what I'm doing. But the in-person classes are very small and without, sounding inappropriate, they're very intimate. My class is maxed out at 6 students. So it's not cram-packed. Some classes they do. They'll put 30 people in a class. My classes aren't like that. I want a lot of direct communication with each one of my students. If it gets too big, it gets too out of control. Everybody's got their own issues with the way parts go together. Everything's different. So it's a good, well-rounded learning experience because everybody's got something new to learn from. But that's the final way that I teach is my in-person classes. But there's a lot of nuggets to be extracted from watching my content online. If you like what I put online, I'd love to have you in a class. But if you can't afford it, you're mobility restricted, watch the content, learn as much as you can, take notes, buy some good tools. I give lots of recommendations for tools. Good tools create consistency, and consistency gives you consistently better build guns.
Like that. I'm told you're into finding or even creating your own measuring devices for different parts of these rifles, different
Yes.
things, checking specs and stuff. Like, what are some of these things? What's this look like? Some of these tools.
One of them is just a simplistic gauge, and it's not because it's the only way to find a problem. So let me grab a bolt real quick. We just got another alert, and we're recording in progress, Mickey.
Got it too.
So we got our bolt where our cam pin goes. So with repeated usage, the cam pin will cause that hole to make it as simple as possible, stretch lengthways, and the bolt will break here or both places. Right? So typically they would use magnetic particle inspection. Anybody can Google that if you want to look at it. It's been used in the automotive industry for probably 100 years, but they're looking for cracks that the human eye can't see. So instead of relying on MBI in the field, I can take a gauge that I made, see how it's sort of like slimmed down, and I can put it into this hole. And if I go it sideways like that, it's not going to show anything. But if this bolt is stretched, this gauge will go in like that and show that it's stretched.
I see.
Yep. That's what it's looking for.
See that?
And most people will be like, why do I want to find that problem? Well, because this is telling me that this is about to give out on me. And depending on the usage of it, that would be a bad day, right? So if I can detect that this is a problem, get it out of the gun. And that's what I also teach too. I try to teach people preventative stuff. Here's the things to look for and get it out of your weapon before it actually stops it from working. It's not just about nerding out about how. Another thing you can do is your firing pin is a gauge. If your firing pin moves freely in your bolt when it's clean, and then you start having failure to fire malfunctions, when this bolt starts to stretch, it does not stretch straight. It takes a bend. Your firing pin starts to bind up. So if your firing pin used to float cleanly, and it's not physically damaged in some way, and now it's binding, this is about to give out on you, here or here, because it's sort of banana shaped when it stretches.
Very interesting. I've definitely had plenty of those break on the firing line over the years.
But yeah, I mean, people, if you were to tell them that though, Mickey, I would say half the people on the internet argue me saying the bolt doesn't break there. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, I have buckets full of broken bolts. This is a very
I
common
definitely got photos of dozens of them that we pulled out of guns, and then somebody had to borrow a bolt from somebody else to finish class if they didn't have another.
stuff like this, just to find the
Go
bad.
back
It's
a
about to
second.
rear its head.
Your Elon internet froze up. Do you sell that tool, or did you just make one that you use yourself?
I make it for students. I've been trying to get. I've been through probably a dozen different machine shops that claim that they can make this, and they can make it, but can they make it to the right dimension consistently across the 100 examples? And the answer is generally no. This is the same problem in the gun manufacturing industry, is that, yeah, they can make stuff, but are they making every bolt the same after the next? Are they maintaining the tooling, the coolant? All those things are important. So when a company says, yeah, I can make you 100 of these little doodads here, and I get them, they're way out of the accepted range of the size that it's supposed to be to actually trust it as a gauge.
You're measuring with a broken tape measure then.
Exactly. You got a Harbor Freight tape measure that says the millimeters is the inch size.
Here's an old rule. When you came to my job site or I came to yours, and we were going to work together all day, and I was going to be your cut man, and you were up on the ladder. First thing we do is you toss me your tape, and I pull it out and make a couple marks on a board and pull mine out next to it. Because even if you go to Home Depot and pull two brand new Stanley tapes out and pull them out, anybody can go do it now at Home Depot or whatever your store is you buy that shit from. You will see those lines don't line up, and it's just like, you got one job, man. You got one job making these measuring tools. And that, the part you're talking about, an inch is an inch, except like now you're saying that hole for the cam pin. What is like the plus minus that the industry allows? I know Colt or Knights or whoever has their own internal, but like, just like, what's a rule of thumb? Like, what is the plus minus for that for brand new?
Well, realistically, depending on the brand, I mean, from like the tightest to the loosest, you can see as much as a 4 to 4.5 thousandths difference between that hole, which is massive when it comes to machine tolerances.
So 4 thousandths, that's an inch chopped up 1,000 times, and that's 4 of those little 1,000 bits. This is tiny.
It's like the thickness of hair, basically.
Yeah, that's tiny, but that's enough that things get sloppy. So then that pin that goes in there, it's got its own plus minus tolerances.
Yep, I can see as much as 3 thousandths on this, on the plus or minus side, sometimes a little bit more. So you take those two measurements and then you add the extremes up, and now we've got a lot of problems.
Okay. Which I think I talk about this with students, and you'll be able to shed some light on it for me if I'm telling them something that's correct. We're talking about guns, and we say, okay, we've taken shooter out of the equation. We've zeroed the gun to the best of our ability. We've got good weather conditions. We've got a good optic that's mounted correctly, blah, blah, blah. We've done all of that. Now we could start looking at 5 guns, same manufacturer. Why are they not shooting the same? Like, one of them could have a bunch of parts that seem to align really nice in these plus minus tolerances, and then you get one over here that's got a few parts that are all like wonky in these extremes, and it just made the lemon that things just aren't playing nice. But over here we get just randomly, because people are pulling parts off the bin, we get one random pile where everything plays nice, and then over here. And if we took a bunch of parts out of them, 5 manufacturers threw all the parts in a bucket and spread them back out, we may now find that gun number 3 in the line is the best shooter. Would you say that's accurate?
That's absolutely accurate. Going back to the bolt, right? We check firing pin protrusion in class. It's a maintenance thing. Check it. Make sure that you have enough stick out, if you call it, right? If there's not enough, cartridge don't get set off. Too much punches the primer. We can swap firing pins around to get that right. Not all the firing pins are the same length.
What's enough?
What's enough? 0.028.
How do you measure that?
So I use a it's some people refer to it as an anvil gauge, a depth gauge, but let me grab it real quick. There's lots of ways to do it though. So Brownells will sell this little gauge. It's a friction firing pin protrusion gauge. I think they're like $40, and it's just got a little cutout, sort of like the bottom of a ladder. And you push the firing pin out and you drag it across it to see if it's sticking out enough. But me, I use this depth gauge. So this tells you how deep that this has gone in. So I will put it into the bolt, zero it out, and then stick the firing pin in. If it's for the hole, it'll tell you how much that firing pin's popping out.
I see.
This is a little more elegant, but you can use the back of, if you've got, a cheap set of Harbor Freight calipers, usually the tail, when you open calipers up, you get a little protrusion part on the back. You can use that in the bolt face. It's not as consistent, but it's better than guessing.
So this is I'm building a gun. I'm on the bench. You could pick the brass up and take a look at the brass, but the brass is not always consistently flush to the breech face of the brass. I don't know what that actually is called. So that's going to give you a variance. But you're saying, like, before I ever even put a round through this gun, I can look and be like, okay, is that firing pin going to be reliably setting off primers? 0.028.
Yep, that's the minimum. Anything under that, I'd be trying different firing pins. And then the maximum is 0.355. So basically 0.36 is the excessive. More than that, it can punch the primer. Now, I've had students that had 0.38 protrusion, and we shoot in the class because people are like, is this going to blow up? And I'm like, no, it's going to leak some high pressure gas out of the cartridge if it punches it. But let's shoot it. And we shoot it, and it doesn't do that. And they're like, well, this is pointless. And I'm saying, so now let's take another trip down the information road and say, well, you're assuming that the primer is sitting flush with the back of the cartridge. Like, yeah. And I was like, so what if your primer is 0.003 in the back of the cartridge?
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
There's all these things that have to add up, right?
Well, maybe reach out and touch deep enough.
Yep, maybe the headspace is longer, so now the cartridge sits further into the chamber when the bolt locks up. So now the firing pin's got to travel a longer distance to make contact with that primer. So now that excessive protrusion is
add some dirt to the breech face, some carbon buildup on the breech face, and push the cartridge farther away from the pin.
You got it. All those things. And this is where people get really weird about gauging stuff, but the gauging stuff isn't always about just being a nerd. It's about understanding that these measurements were made, understanding that thermal variations change the way parts mate. Expansion happens when things get hot, right? So if the clearances between parts aren't right, maybe it works when it's clean and perfectly oiled, but when debris gets into the gun, fouling gets into the gun gets hot, the mating surfaces can change. And those gauges are designed to say, we have the right amount of clearance. So no matter how we're using this gun or where we're using it, it's going to work.
That's what's so amazing about these things, the thermal change that happens after 5-10 rounds, and they still shoot so consistently. It's mind-blowing.
It is.
It is to me anyway.
It's the genius, and this is where I have to give people like, engineers their props, because they're insanely intelligent, but sometimes they don't always think through of how things pan out in the real world. And that's where guys like us, guys like you that pull triggers, can see things, and that can be valuable feedback on how things need to be changed. And guys like me that work on them can be valuable feedback on how things need to be better changed or maybe maintained differently.
I like it. I think I would like to come to one of the courses. I'd like to spend 2 o'clock in the morning sounds horrible, but I'd do it. I'd like to come check it out and just see what things I'm forgetting about or don't have a clue about. Would be very interesting. Final words for you. If the people that viewed or listened to you today, if they never get a chance to cross your path, could be about your business or anything else, what would you leave them with?
If you're a fan of being prepared, take good training from trustworthy people, from people like Mickey, others in that space. If you enjoy shooting whatever brand of gun that you have, educate yourself as much as possible on that firearm so you can better maintain it, get a better experience out of it, or what you want out of it. So just keep being a perpetual student.
I dig that. You guys that tuned in today, I hope you got something out of it. I enjoyed it. I learned a ton. Go check out his channels, give him a follow, and as always, don't be dickheads. We'll see you soon. If there's stuff you didn't understand, stuff you maybe have a differing viewpoint on, throw it in the comment section. We'll talk about it, and we'll see you on the flip side. Be well. Peace out.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.
Well, that was a very enlightening discussion. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you go check Chad and his channels out. And as always, this discussion is brought to you from Ignis Lux Coffee. Ignis Lux is Latin for firelight. We roast it in-house for you. And of course, our good friends at Securit Tactical. These cabinets are the same thing that the U.S. military uses in armories, police agencies, schools, hospitals, and other such places that have to lock things up securely use as well. Securit Tactical, if you are a past student of Carry Trainer, I probably have a code just for you, but you got to shoot me an email to training@carrytrainer.com and I will get that code to you. These guys make these made in the USA cabinets that are, in my opinion, one of the best ways to spread out the storage of your stuff and make easy access for you when you need them, because everything is laid out in a fashion where you can get right at it rather than it being buried in those gun cabinets that we used to see in Grandpa's basement. See you guys soon.